Boko Haram, which has been ranked the fourth most violent terrorist group on the Global Terrorism Index, sprang into existence 10 years ago after Mohammed Yusuf, a local Muslim cleric, was murdered in police custody in Borno State, the northeast of Nigeria. Mohammed and a small ragtag group of fundamentalist adherents had been involved in a low-grade running battle with the military authorities over issues around civil disobedience before he was shot dead while being held for interrogation. Since then, Nigeria has not known peace, with that part of the country practically obliterated, if you may say so, by the viciousness of the group's operations. The resultant insecurity, as with the passage of time, assumed a countrywide dimension, and the situation on ground, according to security analysts, does not support any form of optimism about an end in sight. Joining us now to take a holistic look at the activities of this terror group and projections into the future is Dr. Ona Ekhomu, Nigeria's first chartered security professional, security expert, policy analyst, a lecturer, columnist, and an author. Dr. Ekhomu has followed the progress of Boko Haram from birth, delivered countless lectures about its operations, as well as the challenges of the Nigerian state, as he tries to contain the challenge of insecurity. Recently, he also published a book on the subject, titled Boko Haram, Security Considerations and the Rise of an Insurgency. Good morning, Dr. Ekhomu, and welcome to the program. Good to have you here. First,
good morning, Dr. Abati.
Well, first, let me start by congratulating you on the publication of this book, Boko Haram, Security Considerations and the Rise of an Insurgency. And thank you for sending me an autographed copy. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, sir.
And I would like to start with the book. I mean, you dedicated the book to the memory of the Nigerian service members who lost their lives in the war against the Boko Haram insurgency. And you offer them a prayer that may their supreme sacrifice never be in vain. And I would like to start from that point. In recent times on this program, we've talked about this so-called Operation Safe Corridor and the deradicalization, demobilization, rehabilitation, and reintegration of terrorists. And the Nigerian government says these persons have taken an oath of allegiance to Nigeria. And the Nigerian government claims that it believes that they will not disturb Nigeria any further. In fact, some of them, part of the proposal is to reintegrate them into the Nigerian military. At the level of policy, do you think that this is a way to remember the fallen heroes, the people to whom you have dedicated this, your publication?
Thank you, Dr. Abati. I appreciate you very much for having me this morning. I think this is a very serious issue that needs deep thought. Last Saturday, there was a headline in Punch which said that IDP victims or IDP residents, that is internally displaced persons, were neglected in preference for Boko Haram, well, quote-unquote, repentant fighters who were being pampered by the federal government. If you remember, recently, 600 of them were released from detention and given a largesse of 20,000 naira each. Probably some of them are going to go on government payroll and what have you. So I think something about that looks like it dishonors the memory of those people who have paid the price. Now, a lot of people in service have said to me, well, we can't keep them forever, and then some of them were fringe elements of this insurgency. I say yes. I say, however, we shouldn't be in a hurry to let them go because I have tons of evidence that many of those people have said, and some of them have already done that, they have gone back into the battlefield. So what I say here is, it appears we have a revolving door where they come out and then you recycle them back into the battlefield. Yes, certainly, some of them are going to stay true to whatever oath you say they took to the federal government. But I think that's really just words. They don't mean anything, because you should understand the nature of jihad. That's why I wrote this book. You have to understand the nature of ideology, the strength of ideology, the power of ideology. Ideology goes deeper than even your family, than your ethnic group, whatever. Ideology is deep-rooted. The taproots of ideology go deeper than all these ephemeral things that we consider. For example, that's why the conflict hadn't been won conclusively, because there was a perception in this current government and in the previous government that you could, in fact, negotiate with these guys, or you could offer them something pecuniary. And I think it was Senator Shehu Sani before he got in government. He said, look, these are not people you can give money to, and the problem will go away. You know, so we have to understand this. These are not people who are looking for a good life. The genie has been let out of the bag, and it's going to be very difficult to push the genie back inside that bottle again, as it were. So I think the Operation Safe Corridor, and I have railed against it for several years now, I think it's a mistake. I think the government needs to have a rethink about it. And I think it's not discouraging fighters from joining the ranks. In fact, it appears to be a recruiting ground for them. I mean, because if you say to people, we are going to capture you, and then we're going to let you go into some program, give you some nice-looking uniform, and then eventually maybe even, I don't know, pamper you, let's put it that way, for lack of a better word, pamper you quite extensively. They will say, well, perhaps it's worth it, instead of staying here and suffering, it's worth it joining in the insurgency. So I think in a subtle way, we are probably encouraging people to become deviant, become terrorists, you know, without meaning to do so. We mean well, actually, but the result is not turning out the way it's intended.
I believe it was in July 2009 that the insurgents declared war on Nigeria. So it's about a decade and a year, over a decade now. But the governor of Borno State, the epicenter of this insurgency, has just recently attributed the long, unending battle to sabotage. From your assessment, is there a possibility of sabotage here? And why, beyond, this strategy that you have said is not working, why do you think that this battle remains, continuous? Why is the battle, unending?
Well, that's really another reason that I wrote the book. I think we have had, this is Nigeria's longest war. This is 11 years on. We just had the anniversary last week here on the 30th of July. Well, the attack on Dutsintashi took place on the 26th of July. Dutsintashi is in Bauchi State. They attacked the police station there, and the police, they were expecting them, they had good intelligence, so they routed them. And then they now attacked Yobe State, and they attacked Maiduguri, where they had the mother of all wars, as it were. And General Salim Maina was ordered by President Yaradua, Sheikh Musa Yaradua, Umar Musa Yaradua, to crush them on his way out to Brazil. And so they went in there, and Salim Maina crushed them, he did. He shelled railway quarters where they had their headquarters, and they eventually captured Mr. Yusuf, who, like Dr. Abati rightly stated, was extrajudicially murdered on that same day. And 800 fighters were killed also that day. And so I believe there are problems there. But the whole thing about this is, from that point on to where we are now, we have continued to read the tea leaves wrongly. We haven't really understood the nature of the insurgency. We haven't understood that it takes on a life of its own, Now, what about the people fighting the insurgency? There are people who are benefiting from this insurgency, whether you or I like it or not. There are arms merchants who are making out in a big way. There are even people within government. I mean, we've seen a lot of rot in our government. There are people within government who are benefiting from it. Now, when sometimes I reach out to people in the establishment, I am told that, oh, well, don't let this thing end, though. I mean, this thing shouldn't end. Keep your grammar to a low level. Don't let this thing end, because apparently some people might be benefiting from it. So I think when Governor Zulum comes out and says that I'm still analyzing that his attack on last Wednesday. I'm doing a very in-depth analysis of it, reaching out to people who were in that convoy to find out really what happened before I can make an informed comment on it. But when he says that, it's something that's been well stated, that's been well, in fact, perhaps documented also. We know that a lot of people had benefited quite considerably from this insurgency, and they really don't want to see it end anytime soon. And I think that is where the integrity of President Buhari is important in this matter, because we know he's an ascetic, integrity-oriented guy, and let him say to his people, this thing must end, and it can end, because we can't have unending conflict, as it were, because it's beginning to take on a life of its own, and it's mutating, just like COVID, it's mutating, and very soon, it might result into things that we are not even seeing right now, and those are some of the things I spoke about in my work.
All right, thank you so much, sir. Congrats on your work once again. I just wanted to talk more about the mentality of ideology. I mean, if you read through many other writers like Ali Soufan and Gegis Fawad that wrote an extensive book on ISIS, you keep seeing the cardinal point of these key players starting very small, almost incognito people, but they form an ideology and the ideology blossoms, and it's even there long after they are gone. So most importantly, I want to know, how can we tackle this ideology? Because it's a state of mind.
Indeed. Thank you, Mr. Rufai. A very nice question. I think we have to understand the drivers, the pushers, the enablers. There are many things in an ideological, in extremism, in ideology, the things that drive it. What is driving it? First of all, what's the central message? What is even the starting message, if you may? And then what is driving it? And then what is feeding, what's keeping it alive? And then once you understand that whole set, you can now go and start deconstructing it. So it takes, let's say, you have to take it, visualize it, you have to disassemble it, and then now go into the inners. I did that in chapter 2 or 3 of that book, and I looked at what was the central argument, or what is the central argument of these jihadists. What are they really going after? What is their grouse? And they talked about corruption in society. They talked about mixing boys and girls in the same shade. They talked about taxation. They talked about bad behavior, the kinds of immoral behavior. I think that's what it is. And they talked about misgovernance. So sometimes when I speak, people say to me, well, sir, you should tell the people to go and look at the governance issues that's driving Boko Haramism and all others. Because you see, the problem with Boko Haramism is not just that Boko Haram has been there for 11 years. It is is giving life to new conflict around the country. That is why you see almost the entire country is in conflict now, particularly in the northern part of the country. You have armed conflicts ongoing, and then you have jihadists who are coming from across the region. That's the Mujao guys. Mujao is Movement for the Unity of Jihad in West Africa. They are coming from Algeria, Mali, Burkina Faso, and they are coming like a magma flow into Nigeria. And this is why our problems are intensifying, like the problem of foliage and kidnapping. That is the bushes and kidnapping, where we have the jihadi militia. They are in the bush, they come out, kidnap people, take them in get money to buy more guns, and then of course, live their best life, as it were. So we have these issues, and they are increasing. So, Rufai, I think we need to understand jihad. You talked about Bana, you talked about Sufan. You know, to understand jihad, you must look at first what are the issues they are railing against, and then how can those issues be deconstructed, and then perhaps the messaging repackaged such that we can reach people. But we really need to do some of these things fast, because every day, the kind of examples we give right now, the kinds of messaging we give, the kinds of things we see happening. Look at what happened with ISIS. ISIS was just founded a few days ago, where it was founded actually in 1999, but it didn't become fashionable to 2014, when it started capturing a lot of territory. And then it became sexy. It became a fad to be an ISIS fighter. And you saw young people from all over the world going out there to become members of ISIS fighting in Syria and Iraq. And Nigeria lost a lot of people that I know here who left here to go and fight, and they died in those conflicts. So I think we have to be very careful, because it's very seductive. But, you know, the key thing is, what do you do? First, you need to put the military force up. You need to arrest the conflict, as it were. Then you need to talk it down. You need to, you know, kind of understand the issues, and then be able to reverse the thinking so that people will become, in fact, de-radicalized. Not that stuff they are doing in wherever, that school in Gombe or wherever they have it. And, yeah.
Dr. Ekhomu, your book is divided into three parts. One, historical background. Second, choice of targets. And then three, combating insurgency. But I'm interested in two key issues that you raised in that book. One, you refer to Service Chief General Butai's strategy as management by walking about.
MBWA.
Yes. How is waka about a good strategy for addressing security challenges? And then in chapter 15, you talked about solving the insurgency. Is there a simple solution, or is it a complex way forward? What does the future hold? If you could just address those two questions.
Thank you very much. Well, the MBWA strategy that Buratai used, particularly early in his assumption of leadership of the military, let's say 2016, 2017, it proved useful, because it was able to achieve the fall of Sambisa Forest, as it were. Well, you can capture a place, like we know, you can capture a place, but it doesn't mean you can govern the place, or you can garrison the place, as it were, as we found out now. And so they were able to chase out the bad guys, the terrorists from there. And so what I was saying at that point, in terms of recovering all those local governments that were under terrorist control, Boko Haram control, as it were, from Adamawa State and Borno State and all that, in terms of recovering those local governments, it was because, you know, at the time, almost 2/3 of that area was under insurgency, insurgent control. But he was able to recover that, and I think that the date on that is whether December 31st of 2016, I believe. But however, so that was good at that time. Now, some water has passed under the bridge. Remember, this is a 10-year, it's a longitudinal study I did. So it's a 10-year study. Now, and so perhaps those MBWA tactics may not be useful for the current status, for where we are today. I don't know. It's up to him. He knows what job, he's the military commander, he knows what job he needs to achieve, and perhaps come up with something suitable that will solve that problem. But let's go to what you said here. Now, what I put up 3-4 planks there. I said, one, you needed the military option, and you must almost always maintain the military option, because you must, you know, you need force to tell a madman to just shut it for a while. Now, I said you needed international cooperation, because we know that part of what's stymie this conflict, that is our response for a few years there, was the Leahy Act, which came about because there was a lot of AI reports, AI is Amnesty International reports, that the Nigerian military was abusing Boko Haram captives and all that. And so the Leahy Act already really worked against us because the Obama administration applied it in denying Nigeria access to fresh gear. Fresh gear is good weaponry to fight the war. And so, but this current government has overcome that problem, and luckily there's a change of administration also in the United States. So things are yummy and chummy now in terms of armaments. But we had to, at the time, we were desperate for weapons. We had to go everywhere, China, Romania, even South Africa, to go look for weapons. So, I mean, it was really that bad. And you remember when they were seizing our cash all over the place because people were actually carrying cash in briefcases looking for weapons to buy. So international cooperation is important, not only in terms of weaponry, but also in terms of other things. For example, there was a discussion about R2P. R2P's responsibility to protect. Now, it's a principle in international relations, and it says that a sovereign government has a duty to protect its citizens. And if you are not able to protect the citizens, then the United Nations can come in and help you do that. That is, they take over sovereign control from you. Well, we haven't seen much of that happen, but it was discussed. And for what I consider Nigeria a major power, for a major power or a medium power, let's borrow Professor Balaji Akinyemi's construct there. For a medium power like Nigeria, that's really a slap on the face. And so that's a problem. So we need to have the cooperation because you need intelligence to get Cameroon and Niger and those guys to work with you and give you information. And Nigeria is surrounded by Francophone countries. We need intelligence, and we need to have France looking kindly on us and working with us along with other world powers. And then the kind of things we can get also from them, technical intelligence and other kinds of intelligence. And then so I also talked about my key here is what I call a creative solution. Now, what we find here, this is what brought about the Boko Haram conflict. Even if I don't share anything this morning, let me try to share this, Dr. Ruben. What brought about the Boko Haram conflict was absence of governance and an inability to assess risks. And we do it till today in this country, till today. And it is the cause of most of the conflicts you see around this country. Risk is defined as an untoward event, something that will cause loss, a loss-producing event. A risk will start to manifest. Now, what every responsible government does is do risk sensing. You have feelers out there, you have, let's say, probes, you have an antenna out there that detect risk from afar. Now, when you detect that risk, you put out assets to manage those risks very quickly, such that it doesn't become a loss event. Or in fact, first, so that it doesn't become a threat, and then ultimately a loss event, and then you start fighting like we are doing now. Look at billions and billions and billions of dollars lost in the Northeast. Look at lives, tens of thousands of lives lost in the Northeast. And this ought to shake anyone's conscience. So, but what happened? It was just a governor, or a local state administration that didn't appreciate what was going on there because of political differences with Mohammed Yusuf. I mean, it's really very unfortunate. And then here we are, they've let hell loose on the Northeast, and look at what we have. So if you sow the wind, you might in fact inherit the whirlwind.
Well, it does make an insightful read, your book, and I can imagine all the knowledge in there. But from what you have assessed in these 10 years, do you foresee the insurgency being around for another decade? And in all of this, in your assessment, where is the morale of the troops? How would you assess that in the course of this war? Very briefly.
Thank you. Well, I think we might be doing this thing for another 10 years. We are already 1 year into the second 10 years now. We've just completed 1 year. So we are now some change into the second year of the 10-year frame that you have set. We might be doing this because, again, we still don't, that's the problem I have. We call it intellitection. We still don't understand what the problem is yet. So let's first understand the problem, even before we start dealing with it. Please, I didn't say that the soldiers should lay down their guns and come back to classroom to understand. No, they should do what they're doing. But I'm saying from a leadership, and like Dr. Arabati just said, from a strategic point of view, we need to have a good, clear understanding of this threat. I think it's a threat now, of this crisis, and then such that we can now start, the speeches from the throne will be to the point. And then we can, because it will need a 5-year time frame to solve the problem from when you understand it. 10 years ago, I said it will take us 5 years to solve the problem. People laughed when I said that at Institute of International Affairs. And well, look at where we are, 10 years, because we still don't understand the problem. Until today, I can really say that we don't understand the problem, particularly in the governance circles. And once that understanding is there, we shall have a hope of solution.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Ona Ekhomu, for joining us this morning. Congratulations once again on the publication of your book. It's a book that I recommend highly to our viewers. But, Doctor, if you have the time, just check page 177 of that book. I think the spelling of dignitaries is something that should be corrected in future reprints. But it's a very well-made book, very well produced. Thank you.